So let's take a look at an example with one sample t-test. So open that Excel file that you guys have, Analyze Phase Worksheet. You have a tab for t-test mean value. So here we have an example, since say the bottling line cannot produce 800 bottles per hour, right? So here we have let's say an example from Coca-Cola Bottling, which is one of our long-term partners, I think more than 10 years partnered with Capstone Project with us. Say we collected data, we have 10 hours of observations here. We have line 1, we have how many bottles per hour they produce in each one of those hours. Can we say the bottle cannot produce 800 per hour? So we need first to create the null hypothesis. So what will be the null hypothesis from this? So remember, the null is we can't say anything, right? So the null would be that the mean, so it could be x bar equals to 800, right? Cannot say that's anything different than 800. The alternative hypothesis here, remember, we want to say it's different, higher, or lower. Cannot produce 800, right? So it have to be so in this case will be equals or different than, right? So the question is cannot produce 800. And saying more than 800 or at least 800 or less than 800. It's saying that cannot produce 800, right? So the alternative hypothesis is going to be different than 800, okay? And here we have the data, here we have the line. This is just done like the math behind it, okay? So we have 10, n equals 10, we have the sum, the mean of 807, and here I'm doing this math here, okay? So we know that 800 is the known value. This will be the average, ML, 1 will be the x bar, so the average is 807. You divide by s, which is the standard deviation here, divided by the square root of n. So if you do that, you get a t statistics of 0.35. And then you have to compare with the t distribution for critical values. So the critical values here are what should be the t statistics to actually be able to reject the null hypothesis. So in this case, we have to look at this table, and this table has the degrees of freedom and the tail p, which means what is the, if I'm looking at one side or two sides. Basically, we need to look at these two columns. If I do in one tail, I take a look at this column here, which is the 0.05. If I'm looking at two tails, I take a look at this one because it's 0.25 in each side, as I explained in the other video. So degrees of freedom is 9 because I have sample size of 10 minus 1, that's 9. So I take a look at 9 here. And then it is a two-tail, as I explained. This is the critical value, 2.262. Our t-statistics was 0.34, which is not higher than 2.62. So we cannot reject the null hypothesis. We can only reject the null if this value was higher than the critical value, okay? And that's what I'm saying here. And then here, if you run a descriptive, another way to do the same thing is to run the descriptive statistics and look at the confidence interval. Remember we did that in measure? We looked at the confidence interval. Yeah, you can do that, right? You can take a look at the confidence interval and see, is 800 in the middle here or is it outside? So if 800 is in between the confidence interval, which is mean plus or minus the confidence interval, and that's how you calculate that, you will have to calculate that. Because Excel already gives it to you, and you learn in previous classes, hopefully. So we have the confidence interval, the mean. The mean could be any value between those, the mean of the population. So 800 is in the middle here, so you cannot reject a null. If 800 was here, right, if it was 860, for example, then we can reject it, right? Because 860 is more than the confidence interval of the mean here. Okay? Does that make sense? Hope so. So now I want you guys to solve this problem here, right? So you can do it in these two different ways. You can do this math, which you calculate the non-value here, the average, standard deviation, and n. And you also can do the descriptive statistics and find out the confidence interval. I want you guys to do it in those two ways, okay? Do the confidence interval and do the statistic tests, and hopefully they will give you the same answer, right? Remember, if it's higher than the t statistics is higher, I can reject. If it's lower, if it's within those limits, I cannot reject, right? We have here the critical values to tell you. So here I have this problem. So after this video, I want you to find the answer for this problem. I will not give you time in class to do this problem. I will only do the problem for you and correct it and answer questions, okay? So I'm not going to give time to do problems in class anymore. I want you guys to do the problem now. Yes, you need to work, not only just watch videos. Do the problem, and I will just correct it in class, okay? Go over that in class, okay? So read it. We have a non-value here. We have the data here. You can use descriptive statistics. We learned on measure phase. We can do this math as well, and let's see how it goes. And that's it for this video.